It's time for another update of this crypto game thing that I am creating. Whenever I make a game, I follow a pretty consistent process. And this goes across every game that I've made, from board games to card games to reality show challenges. And that is, I start with a North Star experience. And what that is I pick a spot in the sky that I start driving towards. And that spot is specific based on the sector as well as the target market. And the experience that I'm trying to create is an emotional one. It's tying wherever I'm going to an emotional experience that I want the target market to create. And for something to really hit, for something to be fun, it needs to be emotionally engaging for the target market. And so I'm always thinking about, okay, well, what does the target market want in the game already? So if I'm going to pitch somebody a game, I want to make sure that they're excited about playing the game from the jump, which is why I'm not going to pick whatever the hell game that I find most interesting. I'm going to pick a game that I really feel like has an opportunity to hit in the market. And I will do this by trying to understand what specifically is going to hit for my audience. So the first thing that you should always do when you are doing an analysis on, say, the market is look at what's already working. And I'm sure everybody does this already. And you might be thinking, oh, no, nothing's working in Web3 gaming, Nick. That's not actually true. There are similarities and some themes that consistently crop up in Web3 gaming. And if we look at what those things are and understand why, it'll help evaluate if there's like any areas that are underserved and underexplored. And that's where the white space is. That's where the opportunity zone is. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So before I tell you what the answers are, or I guess, you can wait, but drop your comments below at what you think the market might want, or what you think the market doesn't want, or where you think some white space is in the market. I'm curious to know your thoughts, and that's part of the reason I'm building all this in public, is because I want to know your opinion on the matter. I believe that the market already wants a few things. Number one, what we've seen work in fully on-chain games is people like risk-taking. They like the opportunity to win money. They also like the opportunity to really corner a market, especially where they have an edge. They like working together to try and do psyops to other people. I have found that in talking with a lot of people in Web3 gaming, the vast majority of them had their start in RuneScape when they were gold farming. And the reason gold farming is important is because they were able to actually turn that into money. So it's a very clear link for why they jumped into Web3 gaming or saw the promise in Web3 gaming. I also think that a lot of people in Web3 really, really like poker. I've noticed that is a consistent theme amongst people, is they really do like poker. I think there's themes in that. Number one, risk-taking. Number two, it's probabilistic risk-taking. So it's not necessarily just risk for the sake of risk. It's understanding how to manage that risk over time. I would say it's a long game, so it requires focus, and it takes a long period of time to actually come to fruition. That doesn't mean we should make a long game for the sake of being a long game, but it's just a pattern that I've noticed. The other thing is it's pretty social. You get to know other people, and you get to understand a different level of human being decision making as a result of playing poker with other people. There's some bluffing. There's some unknown information as well. That kind of leads me down to a ZK path. So there's a lot of different opportunities there. But what I'm really thinking is there a white space in the market? Because a lot of people would look at the Web3 gaming genre and say, oh, well, it's just a game for degens, or it's a bunch of gambling games. And people like risk just for the sake of the risk. And I don't think that's actually true. I think people like the opportunity for reward and are comfortable with the idea that risk is involved in that, but they don't want to take risk just for the sake of risk. People will play these on-chain games because they can see that there is a clear opportunity if they have a clear strategy in order to turn a profit. And oftentimes that means, oh, I look at the assets and I know that if I stake this, I'm going to get more and more fungible token, and then I spend this fungible token to then get more of these assets, and therefore this thing is increasing and I'm getting more fungible token as a result. Okay, that's a very clear link from where I go now to where I go in the future to create more of the resource, right? They also already know in the back of their mind that they need to sell at some point in time so that they don't get left holding the bag. All right, so they understand that level of risk. I would say that the risk in poker is you don't want to put in all your chips all at the exact same time. I think what Duper really did was really special. They had an opportunity for players to win the game together by trading resources with each other, and that plays into a ton of the strategy, and I really like that aspect of it. So I think one of the big through lines with all of crypto gaming is that there has to be some element of risk. And there's always an element in your mind of playing the real game. And the real game is the game that's outside of the game that you're playing over here. It's the broader game, right? It's the idea that, this small game that you're playing is just one aspect of the real game. And so if you forget about the real game, then you lose the plot. And I think that's what the issue is for a lot of these crypto games that they've been trying to make, is they focus so heavily on this rather than focusing on how this relates to this. And I think that's an element that needs to be present for a crypto game to actually work. There's a couple elements from board game design that I really like that are pretty underexplored in crypto games. The first one is push your luck. And there's elements of push your luck in different crypto games out there, I'm sure. But I think it's underserved. The big thing with push your luck, if you're unfamiliar, it's essentially you're going to continue taking a decision over and over and over again to continue on. And if you go too far in one direction, then you bust and you lose everything that you had gained up till that point and you're toast. So really good push your luck example is a Crash game, right? That's a game where you continue to stay in until you think it's going to end, and you know it's going to crash at some point in time, but the question is when and how long do you stay in? I like that aspect, but there's more things that you can do with push your luck. One of the big things that you can do with push your luck is cause little decision points in the mix. And Slay the Spire is a really good example of this, where you're traveling along a path in a map and you hit a campfire. And the campfire is the only location that you can have to re-health. But the interesting thing is, if you want to upgrade your stuff, which you absolutely need to do if you're going to make it to the end, you have to skip resting. And you don't really heal that often. It's really hard. And the variability of the game of Slay the Spire is huge. So if you go into the next monster with half health, there's a chance that you lose all of your health in that one monster. And it's crazy. The variability is huge. So you're always pushing your luck of, do I think I can actually survive until the next campfire? Or do I rest right now to ensure that I will reach the next campfire? The tough part is, if you rest, you're not upgrading, which means at some point you're probably toast. And I really like that push your luck mechanic because it forces you to decide in context, is this decision worth it? And I really want to make sure that push your luck is a core piece of the crypto game that I'm making. Another thing that exists is game theory as a basis. There's a lot of crypto games out there that use game theory, and I think that really resonates with a lot of people. I think that's a really fun concept. I would be curious to explore that more. There's a lot of different elements of game theory, but in essence, it's the idea that you are imagining what other people are doing and adjusting your strategy based on that. So it's not necessarily a full centralized personal experience. You're always thinking about what everybody else is doing and you're adapting as a result. And I think that's a really, really cool aspect, and a lot of crypto games would do well to integrate that. One other element that I think is valuable is the idea that you can bet on yourself. And one of the best games out there that really does this is Marvel Snap. So when you're playing the game, at any point in time, you can choose to double the bet. And you do this because you think you have the cards that you need in order to win. And your opponent can do the exact same thing, and that's what makes a really exciting match, is when you both double the bet because you both really think you're going to win. That's really, really cool. Now, the reason that you would do that is related directly to the game model. In the game, there are 3 locations. If you win 2 out of the 3, you win the match. But the tough part is those locations are random, and they change the rules drastically for that round. And that is such a great game design concept because you never really know what to expect. And so it has a bit of a poker-esque situation where these locations are getting revealed over turns, so you don't necessarily know what's going to happen. In addition, you don't necessarily know if your deck is going to be really good against the opponent's deck in relation to the locations that are on the board, which brings in a really great next mechanic for Marble Snap, which is the idea that you can retreat. With these mechanics together, it allows you to really have a dynamic and unbalanced ecosystem, which is great. What do I mean by unbalanced? A lot of people talk about balance in games, but imbalance is actually what makes games fun. It's the knowledge that you have an asymmetric advantage and you're going to exploit that asymmetric advantage to win. Now, the cool thing about retreating is it allows that asymmetric advantage to exist, and if you recognize that you don't have the advantage, you can leave and retain your resources. And I love that. And I think there's a lot of corollaries both to poker as well as to potential crypto games that could exist. So that's another big one. The last piece I want to talk about is sustainability. And a lot of people in crypto talk about, oh, this needs to be a sustainable ecosystem. Oh, this needs to be a sustainable game. And for some reason, we don't seem to understand what the hell sustainability means. I've come across this constantly in the last essentially 3 years of working full-time in crypto. And sustainability is very, very simple. It means that you are taking in more money than you are giving back out. And you're taking in enough that you can sustain whatever business it is that you are operating. Sometimes that means sustaining a token as well. And occasionally that means buying back the token. So what is sustainability? It's the ability to make sure that the ecosystem can continue operating in the direction that you want it to, and you're taking in the value to be able to make that happen. And a lot of people forget the taking in the value part. That's where a lot of people go astray. So I'm going to make a crypto game that is sustainable by default. It's not going to be unsustainable because that would just be completely against everything that I've been trying to work towards for the last couple of years. So I have a couple answers on how I believe I'm going to do that. That's saved for next video though. So you got to come back for that if you want the answers. A lot of people think, oh, well, it's making something sustainable is easy. I'm just going to do full PvP, right? Because if two people put in $1 and then the winner, who is the person who shoots the other person, they take both dollars, then we're good to go. The tough part with full PvP and full skill-based betting is, even though it's sustainable from an economic standpoint, it's actually unsustainable from a game standpoint. And what do I mean by that? Say you've got 100 people, and they're all playing. 50-50 odds of success. The bottom 50, the lowest skilled players, the bottom lowest 50, they continue putting money in, and maybe they win 50% of the time. Maybe they win less than 50% of the time. If they're the lowest skilled players, theoretically they would win less, especially when the best skilled players win more than 50%, right? So do the lowest skilled players continue wanting to bet? My answer is no. Of course they don't, because they realize that they're lowest skill. Okay, so you lop off the bottom 25%. Now you got 75 people. There is another situation where the lowest 50 continue to lose more than the highest 50. So you lop off another 25%. You lop off another 25%. This continues over and over until the game implodes on itself. There's no more people left to play because you don't keep betting if you know you're going to lose. So if you want some type of betting in there, you need to make sure that the best players in the game have an opportunity to lose, which means it can't be 100% skill. There needs to be some element of luck in there, some element of randomness where you can have that asymmetric disadvantage, right? Where even if you are the best decision maker in the game or the most skilled player in the game, you still have an opportunity to lose. And that is what makes the game really exciting and fun, when you do have the chance that you're fighting against something that could make you lose, but you don't necessarily know if you will lose. And I think the skill is knowing when you'll lose or not, and that's the push your luck that I'm trying to get to, right? So you can see how all this kind of flows together. I wish more people thought about this like this, but it's just been my career for my entire life. So, I'm not anticipating that everybody's going to be thinking in this direction. All right, so if I'm looking at the target market and I'm looking at what do people want to do, that is kind of the direction that my mindset is in. People want this probabilistic risk taking. They want this opportunity to fight against each other, but also they want to know that they still have a shot to win, even if they're not like the best. So from a North Star experience, what do I want? I want something where the decisions that you make are the game. I want you to be asking yourself, is this risk worth it in a context that is constantly shifting underneath your feet? I want you always to be considering the real game while you're also considering the game that you're playing and having those decisions that you're making in that small game context related to the big game. All right, does that make sense? I also really like betting on yourself or knowing when to bet on yourself. I think that's a really cool aspect. Of course, you still have to have the opportunity to be wrong because there is no reward without risk. That is the core fundamental of sustainability. Finally, I want this game to be a game that AI agents can play. And this is really interesting. It's a completely different aspect of gaming. We haven't really seen it before. And this is also why I think pure skill-based betting is not going to work. Because if you have AI agents that are playing at or better than human players, well, then they are going to win all of the skill-based betting. So skill-based betting is not long for this world. I hate to break it to you. Unless you have a bunch of anti-cheat and anti-bot and blah, 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 blah. But I want to build this in from the start, where AI agents are enabled to play this game from the jump. That way, if you have an AI agent and you know how to train it really well, you can do really well. And if you're a noob who doesn't know how to use AI agents, I want the opportunity for you to tap an AI agent that already exists and say, okay, you can go for it. But at the same time, I want humans to be able to play this as well and to want to play this as well, which is why you have that element of even the best decision makers can still lose. So the fun of the game is trying to figure out the problem, the puzzle of the experience. And I think that's a really big aspect of it. So you can learn more strategies on how to do well in this game from an AI, and then you can play it yourself if you really want to. Or if you're just playing this, to try and maximize every opportunity, maybe let AI run loose. I'm curious to know if AI will actually win in this game. I don't necessarily know if they will or not. And I think that relates to a lot of contextual decisions and your gut level of risk. And do you want to take risks at this point or not? I'm curious because if we do a risk-based game, I don't know if AI agents will always take the best risks. I really don't. There will be different ways to code different levels of risk into the AI agents as well. So it seems like a really cool experiment, and I think that's an interesting direction to go down. So I'm probably going to integrate that into the game in some way. But what do you think? What do you think this target market in crypto gaming wants? What's oversaturated? What do they not want? Let me know in the comments. Remember, I'm tracking everything. I'll see you in the next video.